Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have an updated tier list for the Dragon Ball Super BT17 meta. We've had a couple of regionals in the past couple of weeks. Primarily, we've had the Play TCG Akon regional that had 128 players. We had the Pro Play Games Origins Friday regional, which had 56 players, as well as the PPG Too Many Games Convention tournament this past weekend with 110 players. So those are the kind of three main tournaments that I'm basing the updates for. And generically, we're just going to take all the leaders that I originally rated, which is also right above me. That's the original tier list. We're going to put them on where I think they deserve to be. We're going to add any leader that topped in any of those three events that I did not originally cover, and just kind of go from there. And I do want to mention too that it's it's pretty cumbersome to put every leader in the game on this tier list. There's over 100, and there's a lot of overlap for a lot of them as well. Generically, if I didn't mention them, they are probably playable or below. But if you guys want to ask some questions below on some specific leaders, go for it. But I do apologize. We won't get to every leader, but these are, I think, just the kind of core ones we want to talk about. Generically, the BT17 ones that are new, and then anything that's meta on top of that, or have done tops previously in the BT16 meta or currently in the BT7 meta. So that is for that, guys. So we're going to just get started with the Sinchenron. And real quick too, so the tiers are highly competitive, which I would assume to be in almost every top 16 and probably win an event or two. Competitive, which will be occasionally in the top 16 and would not be surprised to get a top finish or first place finish. Playable is some top 16 finishes, but rarely will get a the W at the end of the day. Fun are just, if you're really good, you will be able to get to the top 16 or top 8 for like a 64 player tournament, and the trash is just everything else. This is mostly just to put Piccolo in there because I'm still very upset that the deck is not as good as I want it to be. It's probably actually in fun or playable, but I'm going to put it in trash because I'm still spiteful about how good the deck could be and how good it is now. So anyways, going over the next list. So we have Sinchenron. I put that in competitive previously, and I think that's where it lives. Sinchenron is always going to be good. I'm going to say that, and then it's going to get neutered next time, but it's such a good core. People know how to play this deck because they've been playing it for literally 2 years, which means they're not going to stop until it's bad. And if you want to be good with this list, you can. It has a lot of good tools. Yellow has, I think yellow generically is in a good spot. And that's kind of where I'm going to put it. Next up, we've got King Piccolo, which I think I put in playable previously. Yes, I did. Obviously, I think I put in highly competitive, and then the ban list hit. And I think you can still top with it, and it did get some tops. I think specifically got top in the Pro Play Games Friday Origins Regional, and if I believe right, yes, it did. Got second place, but that was also piloted by Michael Carrick, who's also just a god at the game. So that could just be him wanting to do well with any deck that he plays. So do make some note on that. But yeah, I think if you still like Piccolo, it's good. The only thing I'd say about that is that if you want to play a red aggro list, it's probably U7 Goku. It's still probably the best red deck in the game. And generically, I'd say it is the most straightforward build-wise in a lot of regards. You just buy a couple boxes of BT16, you get your cards from there, get a couple of red staples, and you are in a good spot. So I still think this is probably one of the best decks in the game. Definitely the best red aggro list in the game. It does a lot of work, and it's still doing a lot of work. And I think as long as I still think this needs an errata. I'll say it, that you have to go down to like 6 life or something when you awaken early. Being able to awaken super early with this effect and not have to go down in life, I think, is a mistake. But besides that, I think it's fair in a lot of ways. It's very powerful, and it's a good list. So putting that back up in highly competitive, which I had it in previously. Next, we have Gogeta. I'll put this in playable too. It did get a top 16 finish as well in, I believe, the Akon regional. Yes, that's correct. It got a 13th place on that event. So I think it is a playable list, and I think it is you can still use it. I will say of the two, I would probably play either the Soul or Super Saiyan God Trunks or the Toa. I think all these are kind of in the same kind of mix where They were worse than Gogeta, and then I think they're a little bit better, but I think people were kind of rotating off of like a black overrealm aggro deck of these. But I think they're all good. I think I originally had Super Saiyan God Trunks in competitive, and I don't think it's topped anything. Toa did get a top, so maybe I'll put it up in competitive. It's probably the best of the three right now. I did get some hate mail not putting Toa any higher. So maybe by the end of the video, maybe we'll bump it up to competitive. But I think they're all kind of in the same kind of lane where they're not as good as how Gogeta used to be, and so they're still there. Next up, we do have the Super Saiyan God Son Goku. I put this back into competitive, and I think I might put this down to playable. I don't know how I feel about it. It's fine. I think that I think Gamma, honestly, and even SS3 Reboot is in a better spot. I'm going to put it down to playable, maybe the top of playable, but I think it's there. I think it and Soul Striker are still pretty comparable in a lot of ways. Super Saiyan God Goku is probably a little bit of an edge over the at least the nerfed version of Soul Striker, but I think it's still in a good spot. But in general, I think just like this more like blue mid range is not as good as like the blue control that we see from these other lists. So I'm just going to put it there and kind of have it rest there. Next up, Trunks and Vegeta. I'm going to put it up in highly competitive, which I had it in the first place. And in general, I'd say 4 of the 3 of the highly competitive on my original video, I think I think Dripku was a mistake putting it up there. But in general, Trunks and Vegeta, I think, is the premier yellow list right now. There's a lot of good stuff. I think people are trying to put in the Empower stuff and other yellow tools we got in this set. And I think it's really, really paying off. It's very good. A lot of disruption for your opponent. A lot of ways to gain card advantage. And if you start to get your engines off and everything, you feel very good about it. So I think highly competitive is where it should sit. And I think you'll see a lot more of it moving forward as well. It didn't do so well, I think, at the beginning of the season at the ACON regional and the Origins regional. It did not have any places, but then it got 4 in the Too Many Games Con this past weekend. So I still think it's highly competitive, and I'm going to have it sit there. So next up, we do have the spaceship. I think I put this at the top of playable because I was worried about being competitive and playable. I think it's bottom end of competitive. I'll give it like a half step up. I still think if you want to play a good red deck that's aggro, you are still playing the red U7, but this is a great kind of alternative. I think sometimes I think this is just like a less consistent version of U7 Goku. There are some like differences with it on how you're playing it and everything else. And if you want to play the new deck, definitely play the new deck, and you'll be fine there. And I think obviously there's some time to get familiar with the list and getting your correct build. So maybe we'll see some more of these. We did have, I think, one finish by Frank Miller in the DBS Too Many Games Con, and I think we had one in the Origins. We had Devin Brensel with that. So it's doing stuff. I think it's fine. It's probably not super duper busted, but I think people are playing it and they're getting results with it. So unlike I'll put these in the fun tier. I don't have anything to say about them besides if I could remove them from tier maker without making a new tier list, I would, but I can't. So they're there. There they are. They're in the fun tier. Enjoy their stay there. Next up, Gamma. I put that in highly competitive, and I think that is the spot to go. If this weekend showed us anything, it is in a good spot. People are figuring out that, man, this deck is actually kind of good. Getting 3 energy at the start of your opponent's turn every turn after turn 3 is kind of why Soul Striker or SS3 was good. It's why SS3 Reboot is good, which I'm going to put into competitive, probably right below it. I think that Gamma is a little bit better. I think Access to Turning the Tide is a little bit better than the ramping for this one. But man, this is still great. Obviously got top 4 at the regional this past weekend, and it is in a good spot. I think Gamma generically is the better list, but I don't think we got to count SS3 Reboot out. So look forward to a lot more Gamma. You're going to see it. I guarantee it. So next up, we do have the cooler. I'm going to put this up. I think I had it at the top of competitive last time, and I was kind of antsy to put it in highly. I'm going to put it up there. It is doing super well. It did get a top finish, and I think every event Yes, every event for these three that we're talking about, it got a top in it. And so I think it's good, and I think people are doing well with the list. It is kind of tricky. It kind of reminds me of King Cold in a lot of ways. So if you like King Cold, I think Cooler is just better in this meta. It's more flexible what you have, and you don't get like a bunch of bricky like field cards in hand as much. The unisons are combable with the leader and stuff. So that recursion, being able to just pass a turn with a lot of energy up feels kind of good. You have some hand destruction stuff and kind of everything else. All right, next up we do have Dripku, which I think this is the biggest mistake of the tier list. I put it in highly competitive. I'll probably just put it in like the middle of playable. It's fine. I think if you're playing a unison ramp deck, we're probably going to play the cooler. But if you want a yellow unison build, I highly recommend Turtles. I can't recommend this enough. Try it out. It's super fun. It's better than Dripku in the sense of like abusing the Empower Gohan in a lot of ways. So I think this is kind of just just because you start off with a unison that's a 16k and 3 markers at the beginning of the turn, at the beginning of the game, you're in a really good spot. So that's where I'm putting it, and I think it's there. Next up, we have Invoker Goku. I'm going to move this into playable. Obviously, we did have a short stint of it doing well, and then they errated the Aandroidd 17, and then no one wanted to play it anymore, which is a real shame because I think the deck is still very viable. I think, getting down to, having to pay 3 for it makes it fair, not broken, which means obviously it's not as good, but I do think people should give it another shot and try it out with it. And maybe people have, and they just haven't been getting the tops with it, but I think it's still a strong deck, and it can do some good things in the right meta. So there's not a lot of hand destruction. There's a little bit with Cooler, so maybe that's the deterrent for it, but I think it's in a good spot. Like, talking about hand destruction though, just kidding, we also have the expert deck Cell. I did not put this in the original list, and I don't know why it wasn't in there, especially with my relationship with Cell. So it's here now. I'm going to put it like I think it's like the bottom of competitive. I think it does some really good things. I think it is a little bit too linear for its own good at times, but there are some really good plays with it, and I do enjoy the list. So I like the idea of the list, and I think especially if someone's just getting into the game, just buy 2 starter decks and you're almost good to go with a moderately competitive deck, and I think that's in a good spot. So I'm putting it there. I think I like Cell, and I'm sorry for not having him in the previous list. Next up, we have Finn, which was not on my radar, or I don't think anyone else's radars, but we have it won an event, right? I will say the event that it won was a little wonky because we had like an 8-way tie for first place, and then it just had like the better tiebreakers for it. I'm gonna put it like the tippity top of playable because I didn't see any finishes in the other 2 events that we were looking at today. So I think that top of playable is fine. I think in a format where there's a lot of unisons, it's in a good spot to mess up with it. I will say we did not have as much unisons as I thought. I didn't think that. I was going to assume that Cooler and Dripku were going to be in a slightly better presence. So not having that is something, but and Gamma can kind of play around it for a long time too, which kind of stinks and kind of holds it back in my opinion, but it's fine. It's in a good spot. I think you can play with it, but it is a little, I don't know. It's not super duper good. All right. Next 2, we have Aandroidd 21 and Aandroidd 16. These are competitive if your names are Rohit, Pulsara, and Jared Lopez, respectively. And then if you're not those people, then you're probably just in the playable tier. I'm going to move them up here. I'm going to put like the bottom half of it. I'll put them like right there. They're on the edge. I think you can play them. And if you are those 2 players, you're going to have a really good shot for top 16s. Because guess what? They both did with those leaders, baby. And if you're not, then good luck. And maybe talk to them over Facebook and see if you can get some hints and stuff. But they're fine, and I think they're in a good spot. Next up, we do have the Launch and Bulma. I'm going to put them next to each other, even though Bulma did win the Too Many Games event this past weekend. I'm going to put it in competitive strictly because Danny Wynn was the player for it, so that you get some bonus points for being named Danny Wynn and going to an event. So I think it is fine, and I think you are. And I put Launch next to it too because they're both kind of the same kind of idea. You're red Earthlings that have like less than the top power, but you get a lot of benefits and a lot of card draw and just a lot of opportunities to kind of stall out your opponent, get a lot of value from them. We're in a meta where there's not a lot of aggression, at least not as much as there used to be. So being able to capitalize on that. If you're able to set up and then just have like 20 cards in hand and your opponent has like 7 or 8, you are probably going to win that game if you don't get turning the tide. So I think they are I think they're playable in a lot of ways. I think they're competitive in the right hands, and even highly competitive if you already have highly competitive hands. But in generic, I think they are something that you can play in this format, and I think that's kind of cool. Next up, we've got Genimba Mill, and I'm going to just put all these into the playable tier. I think they're fine, and I think Mill can be okay. There are some decks that draw a lot of cards, and you mill in a format where U7 Goku is in the format means that you can kind of help them out early game, but then you can kind of mill them out late game. I put Sin, I believe, in the competitive, probably at the tail end. Yeah, at the tail end of it, strictly because this was a very unison heavy set. So if we're in a meta with a lot of unisons, Sin has probably more interactions with unisons than the basic list. So being able to do that is kind of nice. I don't think Genimba or Sinchenron are ever going to be like not at least a little bit playable. In general, I think Mill is always playable in most formats, and that's pretty much where they're at there. And then lastly, we do have the Vegito starter deck leader. I'm just going to put him in playable. He's probably just a worse version of the blue Saiyans in a lot of ways. So I think generically all three of these run very similar packages, and they're all in the kind of playable area for them. So that's kind of where I am there. So I'm going to do some quick rearranging based on my thoughts on some leaders and stuff. So I'm going to be a little bit bold. I'm going to say Gamma's best deck in format. Catch me if I'm wrong. Goku second best. Yeah, Goku second best. Trunks there, and then Cooler. And then in the competitive tiers, I'll probably put the spaceship. What do I want next? Probably spaceship. Then these are not again like hard stations for. I'm going to put definitely Turtles at the end because only I think it's good. And what else? That's probably fine. These four essentially they can top if you're really good already in the game. I'll put Cell like right there. I don't think the ordering of these matter too much, but I'll put that there. All right. Playable tier, I'll definitely leave Finn at the top because it won an event, so it has to be kind of good. Invoker, yeah, I'll probably put this at like the bottom here. Yeah, these two here, and then the rest there. So the order kind of matters. It's a little bit of a thought. Some might be a little bit out of order, but they're pretty close. And if this is probably where you've skipped to the end of the video just to take the screenshot of this picture. So here you go. I'll move the mouse. You can take an easy screenshot of it. But here are my thoughts on the current leaders in the deck and in the metagame, rather, based on the couple of events that we've had in BT17. Of course, we haven't had a lot of events compared to like other metas and other seasons. And I will also say like the largest event we've had is 128 players, so there's not as much data as we usually have, but I think this is moderately close for where we're at. But that doesn't mean I'm not wrong and my opinions are right. You guys can let me know where I got it wrong. Again, if you do not see your leader up here, it is generically playable or lower, with some exceptions, just because of how a lot of these leaders, again, I put 3 essentially of the same deck right here just because they're very similar, but I know you guys are going to ask for it. And again, just kind of more reflecting on how we've seen these lists top in the past couple events, and just kind of going from there. Except for Turtles, this is my own pick. Turtles can be down and playable, but I think it's competitive. Play it, dang it! I don't know how to say it any more than that. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Again, let me know what I got right, what I got wrong, and I'll catch you all next time.